The NHO Show.
You got that pressure.
So we've said this is the most wonderful time of the year a few times, but really, and that's in regards to the World Juniors, but I think really the Stanley Cup playoffs are the most wonderful time of the year. Wouldn't you agree, Colin?
Absolutely. It feels like Christmas. And then I've pretty much told my close friends and loved ones that I'm going to be kind of just off the grid for the next month or so, because the first round of the playoffs is probably my favorite time of year, and I want to see as much hockey as possible. It's just nonstop playoff hockey, and it's always on TV. So basically anytime the game's on, I want to be watching, because it's the most important time of year, and this is when you can really form opinions on certain players and how they perform under pressure and in big moments.
And that's very true, because the level of hockey that gets played, regardless of how your team was throughout the season, the level of hockey that gets played in the playoffs is just that they dial it up to 11, and teams are all in. You see players come out of the woodwork that you wouldn't normally expect. You see players taking on roles and responsibilities that they wouldn't have taken on in the rest of the season. And this is really where leadership and veteran experience comes into play. Your team, if it's a team full of rookies, and there are some in the playoffs, if it's a team full of rookies, you're not going to get too far without a veteran player backing you up. And there to be able to say, this is how the playoffs are. It's going to be rough. It's going to be hard. It's going to be great. Here we are.
Absolutely. You make a really good point there. We'll talk about them in a little bit, but Vegas, for example, it's not necessarily that they have a bunch of rookies, but they have a bunch of inexperienced playoff players that haven't had too many games under their belt. So, that's why it's going to be interesting to see teams like that, how they perform. And even on teams like San Jose, how if they can, in Washington, if they can finally, get over the hump. I'm not sure they can, but like I said, we'll touch on that in a minute. But let's just talk about first how kind of silly the playoff format is. Obviously, the NHL really wanted this to happen because of the whole bracket challenge and putting teams into brackets, so they have to play out of their division. But it's just stupid. I don't think there's any other word to describe it. And I'll give you a perfect example. It's people that are Toronto fans. It's well documented that the Boston Bruins or the Leafs are going to have to play most likely the Lightning in the second round, and same in the West as far as Nashville meeting Winnipeg likely in the second round. Those should both probably be conference finals, just based on the standings and how each teams are performing this year. But the fact that they have to play the Leafs playing the Bruins in the first round is a perfect example. The fact that teams that are below them, Columbus, for example, get easier opponents than in the Capitals than the Bruins. So I understand why they do it. They want to create rivalries, but it's just really not fair to the good teams if they're all stacked in one division. So that's how I feel about it. I don't know how you feel the story. Do you have any thoughts on it?
I agree with you. I just don't know if I see it working any other way. There's a league. It's some junior league in the States, I want to say, and it's or maybe AAA league or something like that. I will try to figure out which league it is, but they're testing out a new playoff format that makes it so that if you get first place in your division, you get to choose your opponent. So, or the top four, and I think we've talked about this, or we've touched on it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember you mentioning this before.
Yeah, so the top four teams get to choose their opponent. And at that point, you're either going, and then it kind of leaves it up to you. So you're going to pick the team that you're more likely to win against. It sucks for the bottom 4 teams, but it also creates a little bit of fire, and you never know what's going to happen. And
I love that. Like anything to kind of switch it up and give those really good teams kind of like an edge up on the competition. It gives them an advantage, right? So
well, and you know, if they brought it up to the NHL level, could you imagine? We already do a massive show around the draft lottery.
Yeah.
Which is really just an announcement show.
Yeah.
You know, it's an award show. Like, there's really nothing special about the draft lottery as it stands. You could actually just post the lottery results, and everyone would be just fine with it. But you can make a half an hour show out of anticipation, out of drama, out of suspense. So for the NHL, why don't you make a half an hour show out of who will the Boston Bruins choose as their opponent in round 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs? You know, exactly. Who will the Winnipeg Jets choose as their opponent? That kind of thing. And then, you know, you make it a really dramatic show. It's 30 minutes. It goes on the day before, you know, a few days before, once all the games are over. A couple days before, you put on a show, and, you know, you get a little bit of extra TV out of it. Could you imagine? Absolutely. Like, that's a huge... I'd watch that.
Yeah, I think anyone would. And, I mean, the NHL loves their money-making schemes, so I think it's a great way to, you know, drive some more interest towards the playoffs, especially, and appease the fans kind of at the same time, because I think a lot of people would be way more on board for that. And like you mentioned, imagine the kind of hatred and rivalry even before the puck drops going into the playoffs. Like, if you're a team that got chosen because you're like, oh, they think they can beat us, well, like, screw you. We'll show you guys.
Yeah, bring it.
And it would probably be a lot more upsets that happen. And, like, for me, I just think about all the analytics that would be involved in choosing your opponent and everything too. So that would be
Colin's getting excited.
that would be really fun. And I mean, you said, like, what other alternative are there? Like, I guess the only one I had in mind other than that one is to go back to what they had 1 through 8, but then you have 3 divisions, and, you know, that kind of changes the whole landscape of the big change. I mean, they moved away from that, so I don't really see them going back, but I don't like that they changed in the first place, I guess, and that's what I'm getting at. But another thing to kind of keep in mind, I guess, for this playoff format or new formats going forward is that with Seattle coming in a couple of years, there's going to be 32 teams. So right now it stands that, and before this year it was 16 teams out of 30 made it. So over 50% this year, it's 16 out of 31. So I'm interested to see if when Seattle does come in, if they're going to be okay with just having 50% of the league make it, or if they give, like, an extra spot or 2 playoff position available, or maybe there's, like, kind of what they have in baseball, like between, say, the 8th and 9th place teams in each conference, maybe they have like a 1-round playoff game to get into the playoffs. Like kind of like what the Seattle, Colorado, or St. Louis, Colorado game was this past weekend. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with, like I said, with extra team in the fold, and if the NHL wants to increase playoffs maybe from 8 to 9 to even 10 teams per conference, because parity is at an all-time high in the NHL. And I mean, I'm sure Florida fans would love that, seeing as, and we've talked about this before too, how the point system's kind of not the greatest system either, and Florida actually finished with more wins than Philadelphia did, but missed the playoffs. So, and Philly is in a 3rd place spot, not even a wild card spot. So, yeah, a lot of little things you could change, and things to look forward to with Seattle joining as well.
So here I haven't posed to you an analytics question in a long time. Are you up for a challenge?
Well, I don't know if that's completely true. We did talk about the Vezina.
That's true. But I didn't really put like a really hard analytics challenge to you recently.
That's fair.
Okay, so
what do you got?
So let's take that concept of the top 4 teams get to choose their opponents. Okay. And pick one conference. Don't do both. East or West.
Okay.
Pick East or West, whatever you want. Take the top 4 teams and based on analytics,
Like top 2 in each division?
yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
So top 2 in each division, and based on analytics, to let me know or tell the world which would be their best opponent to choose. Like
And
put
they
it out into a scenario. Like take the top 2 teams, take the teams who would actually get to pick, and from an analytics perspective, these are the teams they should choose as their opponents.
Okay. And I'll limit to, well, because if we're going to keep with the division matchups, like let's say I'm choosing the West and I go Nashville and Winnipeg get to choose. Well, really the only crop they have to choose from are, I guess, their division and then the 2 wildcard teams. So not like, for example, Nashville couldn't say I want to choose the Ducks because they finished second in there, or say the Sharks because they finished third in the Pacific, because, or are you saying that I'm allowed to overlap like that?
No overlap.
No overlap? They have to stick within the division?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's keep it that way. Let's keep it fairly straightforward.
That's simple? Okay.
Simple and straightforward.
Okay. I'm not sure how, I'll probably the East would be more exciting, so I'll probably choose that one, because I think the West would probably end up in similar fashion. But
And for anyone listening, feel free to also give that a shot. I'd be very curious to see, to see the scenarios and how they would play out. And this is homework for everybody. Homework for myself, homework for Colin, and homework for those of you listening. Your homework is to take the top 4 teams, top 2 in each division, and based on whatever stats you want to use, analytics, basic analytics, you want to go in depth with analytics, you just want to go with your gut, whatever you pick, who would those teams choose as their opponents?
Well, I'm really interested in this actually, because I kind of do a little bit of this anyway when I'm kind of choosing my bracket or who I think is going to perform better against each team, because playoffs are all about matchups. It's not who's better, it's how does your team match up against the other team. So, and when I'm looking at things, it's hard to, kind of put weight on or figure out what exactly will matter come playoff time, because it is a totally different season. So even though, for example, say the one team's power play is really good and the other team's penalty kill is really bad, like even strength is way more important in the playoffs than it is in the regular season. Power and odd man advantage, it has way more weight in the regular season. So, and if you have a shitty power play, maybe it starts clicking in the last 10 games of the regular season and you're hot going into the season. So there's all these little factors that, it would be a really cool case study, because you could see what actually are the difference makers come playoff time. And I'm not sure it would even be consistent year to year. It's just, there's so many factors involved, but yeah, I'm intrigued.
Excellent. Okay, so let's move on to playoff predictions, overviews, series overviews, everything you need to know. I want to go really quick. What I want to do first, Colin, is I want to go really quickly through the matchups, and you just tell me which team you think will move on to the next round.
All right.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
You got to tell me yours too, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll go back and forth. Okay. Wild and Jets.
Wild. Jets. No.
Choose
Winnipeg.
wisely. Let's try this again.
Winnipeg Jets are beating.
Are going to beat the Minnesota Wild. I agree. Yes. Concur. Ding, ding. Okay. Next one. Flyers Pens.
I got to go to Pittsburgh, but I do think Philly will put up a good fight.
Absolutely. If they don't put up a good fight, they should all go home. Kings Golden Knights.
Go with the Kings.
Same.
Oh, interesting.
Same. And I really don't like the LA Kings. That's a hard one for me to swallow. Devils Lightning.
Lightning easily, I think.
Yeah, that's gonna be a sweep. They're just gonna yawn and say, I'll see it in a couple of weeks. Maple Leafs Bruins.
Gotta go with the Leafs. Like their chances. Gonna be 7 games either way.
It's gonna be 7 games. It's gonna be one. I don't even know. I can't even.
We
I
know
have
you're
no
picking
idea.
the Leafs.
I am. But I've been. All I can think about is, a few years ago, Game 7, triple overtime, and crying and drinking
Different
myself.
team, different players.
Totally, completely different team.
Yeah.
Completely different player. Completely different everything. I know, but it's just that memory of sitting on my couch crying. My boyfriend at the time went out and got me some wine.
Okay, keep moving, sir. We'll come back to it.
Sorry. I'll reminisce a little bit. Blue Jackets and Caps.
I'm gonna go with the Blue Jackets.
Good call. I also agree. Why are we agreeing?
Yeah.
This is not okay. Avs Preds.
Predators for sure.
Same. I want your Avs to win so bad, but it's just not going to happen. Just for you. Sharks Ducks.
Ducks.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
We're in total agreement.
I know. This makes for a really not exciting.
Okay, well, let's go
TV.
second round then and keep going.
Oh my god. Okay. So second round.
Be Preds Jets.
Preds Jets. I got the Jets.
See, I'm taking the Preds. So there's a difference. It's going to be a good one, hopefully.
That'll be an incredible one.
Then it'd be Kings Ducks. Who you
got? Kings.
I got Ducks. See, we're different.
Okay. This is making for an exciting. This is what it should this is what TV should be, or this is what the NHL needs to do, is just build up a show around two people discussing what their brackets are. The whole time. Will Story and Colin agree?
I feel like
who knows?
People's talking about people's fantasy team. No one wants to hear people talking about others, but everyone wants to talk about theirs.
Yeah. I'm going to call Gary Bettman up and say, hey, we got an idea for a show, Story and Colin. You don't know if they'll agree on a matchup. Win. Okay, sorry. Continue.
Lightning and Leafs.
Lightning.
Okay, and then Pittsburgh and Blue Jackets.
I'm so sick of Pittsburgh winning.
So then pick the Blue Jackets.
Yeah, fine. That's a losing battle. Pittsburgh's going to win.
Okay. So I agree there. So Pens and Bolts in the conference final. Who you got?
Pens.
Okay, and then you had Jets and Kings. Who you got?
Kings.
Really riding that Kings bandwagon.
So I hate it. It pains me.
Pens, eh?
Yeah.
And then who's taking it?
The Pens.
For the three-peat.
Yeah. It's happening.
Well, I'm going Nashville is going to beat the Ducks, and I'm going to say the Lightning's going to beat the Pittsburgh. So I'm going to take Nashville in the final over the Lightning. I know it's kind of like the boring popular choice, but that's how I see it.
All right.
So they've got the overview now.
We've got the overview. You know, if Story versus Colin, do we agree? We don't always, or usually.
It's close though. It's a lot closer than
I
anyone else I've talked to, actually.
Oh, there you go. Maybe you're just like worming into my brain.
That's what I was going to say. Maybe it's just like I've affected your thinking.
Yeah. Which is probably a good thing.
I think so.
Yeah. Thank God. You'll someone
win a lot more pools this way.
What's that? What?
You'll win a lot more hockey pools this way.
There we go. Yeah. I need to get in on that.
Okay, do you want to start? Let's start in the Eastern Conference.
All right, let's start. You know what? I want to start with Maple Leafs Bruins because let's get it out of the way.
That's fair.
So that I don't have to talk about the Maple Leafs losing. Yeah. I don't have to think about it. Okay, so back to my story. All I can think about is that night a few years ago, watching the game on my couch with my boyfriend at the time, and feeling that once it gets to triple overtime, you're like, please someone just score. Don't care who anymore. I'll bet you do care who, because the tears came. I cried. We ran out of beer.
Oh,
We had run out of beer a long time ago, and my boyfriend at the time graciously was like, do you want me to go to the wine rack and get you some wine? And I was like, yeah, that would be a really good idea right now. Because I couldn't leave my house. Like, I was like, I'm not going out. I'm not going outside. I'm not going. And he was a Sens fan at the time, and the Sens were in the playoffs. We had just moved to a new place. Yeah, it was awful. We had just moved to a new apartment, and we didn't have internet for the first, 2 weeks, and it was May. Or no, it was like prime playoff. It was like the beginning of the playoffs. Yeah. So we were at this one bar around the corner every single day. And so finally we got internet just in time for this Game 7 Maple Leafs Bruins triple overtime madness. You
should have stayed. It was working.
I know. This is the problem. It was bad internet. It was a bad company. Anyway, I made terrible decisions. And all because of me, the Leafs lost. I'll take that blame. I'll take that. Okay, but current day Maple Leafs, as you mentioned, it's a totally new team, totally different approach to the game. Even the way that the league as a whole, how it's changed in the last few years is completely different. So, as much as myself and every other Leaf fan is jaded and sad and worried and stays up all night hoping that we won't see another triple overtime ever again. I think there's hope. I just don't think it's going to happen entirely.
I do, and I'll tell you why. Like we've mentioned, I think it's going to be a very tight series. Bruins are nothing to sniff at, but we have the advantage in net. Well, I shouldn't say we. The Leafs have the advantage in net.
Whoa. Are you starting to find loyalty towards the Maple Leafs?
I've always had it. You know that. The Leafs have the advantage in net for sure. Well, not for sure. It's close. Rask is a really good goaltender, but Freddie has just been better this year. The Bruins, I would say, probably as far as team defense go, definitely have the better advantage. Just how they play and their possession numbers and everything. So that is one thing to be worried about. But the Bruins are mostly a one-line team. And I meant to look this up. I'll tweet this out later because I'll find out. But basically their top line, if they're not scoring, they're Brad Marchand led the league or was top 3 in points per game. Just up there with McKinnon and McDavid and all those guys. So when he's not, if you can shut down the Bergeron line, and they're going to have their hands full with the Matthews line most nights. So if they can kind of just play even with that line, I think the Kadri line with Marner and Marleau, and then the Bozak line with JVR and Connor Brown, that those are going to be the key lines that have to feast on the Bruins' second and third line. Not to knock the Bruins' second and third line, because David Krejci is playoff beast. David Backes is, has all that experience. Rick Nash is really good too. So, but I just think that mostly the third line versus the third line, the Leafs have the advantage. And if you go down to the fourth line as well, the bottom 6 is really going to be a big factor in the series. And I think just going to put the Leafs a little bit ahead. But 2 rookies on the Bruins to really watch out for are Jake DeBrusk and Danton Heinen, who both have tremendous years, and I think Leafs fans are going to get to know real well this series. So, yeah, Leafs in 7, hopefully. I think it'll probably be a good way for them to, destroy their demons with the Bruins, because if it does go 7, Boston's got home ice, so it'll be in Boston, and if they can beat them in Game 7 on their home ice, then that'll be quite the accomplishment moving forward. And I think Austin Matthews, fully healthy now, hopefully will take his game to that next level. So yeah, we'll see, but it'll be fun either way.
Absolutely. Okay, so yeah, I think.
You want to stay in? You got anything to add on that?
No, I was trying to think if I had anything really intelligent to say around that series. I don't. I'll just be honest.
Yeah, no worries.
I mean, I think for me, I just look at the team, and you're totally right with the lines, and I completely agree on that front. I just think that where the Leafs are going to struggle is that long haul playoff, like the amount of energy and stamina that it takes to play playoff hockey. And I'm just worried that, although now that I talk through it a bunch, there are a significant number of players on the Leafs who went over and played in the World Championship last year. So Marner came over and played. So, there are a few players in there who are younger and who are, less experienced in NHL hockey, but who played really, really long seasons last year. Marner, for example, he played World Cup, full season of hockey, of NHL hockey, and then went to the World Championship. So his hockey season was significant, and I think that gave him a lot of extra stamina, a lot of extra, he understands how much energy it's going to take to play against the Bruins in the playoffs. But I still do worry about, if they have enough leadership on that team to keep them going. Yeah, and if they do make it to the second round, it's going to be barely make it to the second.
Yeah. This is a great way to, learn that leadership and gain that experience. So either way, if whatever it turns out, it'll be a good learning experience. But I really think the key for the Leafs is just going to be to rely on their speed game, and the Bruins are going to try to get them into like a physical cycle game, but they got to kind of stay away from that if they can.
This series, and I think just on another sidebar, for the Maple Leafs, this year and the playoff round will determine the future captain of the Maple Leafs.
I would tend to agree for sure.
We will, by the end of this series, we're going to know who will be the captain of the Maple Leafs. Interestingly enough. Which we've talked about before. So, okay. All right. Maple Leafs, Bruins. Jury's hemming and hawing on this one. So, tell us what you guys think. Tell us if you think it's Maple Leafs or Bruins heading into the second. Let's go. I want to go Wild and Jets. I know we're kind of jumping around a little bit.
Yeah, that is strange. Okay.
Well, no, just because I love the Jets. Let's talk about the Canadian teams first.
Okay.
I think Jets have it pegged to go to the second round. They're unstoppable. They've got power. They have experience. They're smart players, and against the Wild, if the Wild are, got to change their jerseys, really.
Let it go.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know how much more, I don't think the Jets probably have less experience than the Wild, I would say, but they're just a much more complete team, top to bottom. The big thing with Minnesota is that they're missing Ryan Suter, who's gone. He might even miss time at the beginning next year, which is absolutely a huge loss, obviously, losing your number one defenseman, and he's probably the most dependent upon number one defenseman in the whole league as far as playoff teams are concerned. And yeah, Spurgeon is just probably returning. If not, he might miss a game or two, I think, but can't imagine he's feeling 100% either. I mean, the Jets have some injuries of their own, like Trouba's been battling with an injury and Kulikov's out and stuff, but that's the top pairing of the Wild. And I mean, I'm not really sold. Sure, they've got Zach Parise, they've got Eric Stahl, who had a really big year. I like Nino Niederreiter, who kind of played through some injury, I think, this year, but Jason Zucker is a guy to watch for on the Wild. I think he's just one of those guys, the Swiss Army knife that's just going to produce in the playoffs. He's a little guy that just has a nose for the net, but I just can't see Minnesota putting up a very good fight. I think I'll give them 2 games maybe, but it's going to be over in 5 or 6, I think. And Winnipeg can just throw out like line after line, and they just keep coming. So, and they've got a guy in Hellebuck. Like, I'm not a believer in Devin Dubnyk at all. So that's kind of where it starts and ends with me, with their defense hurt and Devin Dubnyk in that and all the firepower on the Jets. I just think it's going to be too much for Minnie.
There you go. I agree with that one. Okay, let's move on to Flyers Pens.
See, I really I'm just as sick of the Penguins as you are. And
Yeah.
I'm like, next to the Leafs Bruins, or like tied with them, this is going to be probably the most entertaining series of the first round, I think, just because of the hatred involved. Like Giroux versus Crosby, all that history. And I like the Fly. I like a lot what they're doing. Like Philly is going to be a team to watch over the next few years. They probably have one of the best prospect pools in the whole league, and they're already a young team. So watch for them to really build something here going forward. But like you can't really bet against the back-to-back Cup champions, especially in the first round. Like the Flyers do have some holes. I think a guy to watch for me, at least in this series, I'm a huge fan of, is Ivan Provorov on the Flyers. He's their number one defenseman, and he's going to be going against a steady dose of Crosby and Malkin. So watch to see how he performs. But it's not going to be easy, but it will be entertaining for sure.
I'm kind of hoping that the Flyers bring back some of the spice, if you will, of Flyers past, i.e. the Broad Street Bullies.
Yeah.
Not that violent, but I'm kind of hoping, Philly kind of really channels that fire and that toughness that's going to really give the Pens a run for their money. Pens are a good team, but they're not that tough, and you could steamroll them pretty easily.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna lose a series and they're gonna go in there knowing that they're probably gonna lose it, just like destroy them. Just destroy them. Like leave them on the battlefield, leave them on the ice. I mean, and this is coming from the person who's not into fighting, who does not condone fighting in the NHL, but if you're the Philadelphia Flyers and you're facing the Pittsburgh Penguins, steamroll them. And if they're going to make it into the second round, make sure they don't come out without a few scars. That's how
Exactly.
I feel.
I mean, I think with Pittsburgh, everyone knows what you're going to get with the Pens, and Philly's got a few wild cards. So depending on those guys play, like Nolan Patrick's another example, like rookie. It's a good learning experience for him. Sean Couturier is really taking a step forward this year in the number one center position. So they've got guys like Travis Konechny in their first playoffs, Oscar Lindblom. So yeah, they've got a few good young players that are getting the kind of their first taste. So it'll be fun to see how they step up against the defending champs.
Absolutely. All right, let's move to probably one of the more interesting matchups as far as just teams are concerned. Kings versus the Golden Knights.
Okay. Well, let me hear your thoughts here. You got LA winning the whole thing, or going all the way.
This is true. I think LA winning the whole thing is really just based on very lucky matchups. I don't think LA is necessarily the right team to win, but just kind of how everything gets stacked.
Yeah.
It's sort of in theory, I feel like it's a walk for them.
Yeah, Pacific's definitely the easiest route towards the Cup, I would say.
Absolutely. So, the Golden Knights have been this incredible story all season long. Everyone has been, they came out guns blazing. They said, we're the outcasts. We're gonna win it. We're in it to win it. And they caught everybody off guard. You just talked about, the Flyers. What kind of surprises are they going to pull out? The Golden Knights already did. They pulled out all of their surprises. And I've touched on this in previous episodes as well. Do the Golden Knights have anything more up their sleeve? I don't think so. They just don't. They've done everything they needed to do. They've played the games that they needed to play. They've played as hard as they can. And they've done really well, and they've been incredibly successful. Is that going to translate to the playoffs? I don't think so. They're not going past the first round, and LA is just way too experienced, way too strong, and and they're just gonna, kind of like the Pens, it's like we're just gonna take you for everything you've got. It's like the Golden Knights are the young kid at the poker table who has too much money to blow and blew it all in the first two hands. The Kings are that like old, bearded guy with the sunglasses in the corner who looks kind of disheveled, and you think he's gross, but he wins the whole table. And you're like, God damn it. Way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely, I would tend to agree with you on all points there pretty much. Like you mentioned in the opening, like experience is what really comes out in the playoffs, and the Kings have that in spades over Vegas for sure. But I think another factor to kind of pay attention to and why I think that the Kings are going to win is because, I think this is going to be a really important series in playoffs for George McPhee, the GM of the Knights, just to see kind of what he has in each player, especially guys like William Karlsson and Jonathan Marchessault, and like, can they sustain this type of play when the pressure's on, when the checking is way harder and things like that. So it'll tell a lot about his team moving forward, and because Vegas is so much in flux and there's a lot of uncertainty going into next year, I think it'll be a good litmus test for them. But I think, like I said, one factor to pay attention to is that the Knights have kind of already had a successful season. Like they don't really have much to play for. They made the playoffs months ago in theory, and kind of they did play well down the stretch, but this is kind of just a bonus for them. No one expects them to win, and everyone's doubted them since day one, so who knows? But on the other side of the coin, LA is a group of veterans who have had a few disappointing years, the last few, like Drew Doughty, Kopitar, Dustin Brown, and Jonathan Quick. They had to fight tooth and nail to even get where they are right now, and they did it. They played probably their best hockey down the stretch, and Kopitar should be a Hart nominee probably, but they've got a lot to prove. These guys are hungry, and they've proven that they've been there. They can do it before, and like a hungry Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty are a scary duo to go up against. So I think Vegas might be a little deeper as far as, regular season shows, but yeah, going to be LA. I'm going to say I'll give Vegas like 2 games. I'll say in six.
Yeah, I think, no matter what happens, and you touched on this a little bit, no matter what happens with the Golden Knights, their rink is going to be full next year.
Yeah,
every
and
single
that's
night.
Most important. Yeah.
And exactly. And no matter what happens, everyone is going to rally even harder around the Golden Knights. And next year, in their second season, is going to be just as incredible as their first season. And that's all it is. And really kudos for Gerard Gallant, the outcast.
Yeah, he
got kicked to the
Jack Adams.
Absolutely, he got kicked to the curb.
Literally,
and found himself, mixed in with these ragamuffin players. Not at all. Like, they're not outcasted players. They're not ragamuffins. They're literally like, none of these people, they're great players. George McPhee made some very, very intelligent decisions. And Gerard Gallant rolled with it. And, here they are, first year making the playoffs. It's pretty incredible. It's a huge story.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so unfortunately, though, LA is going to take it. All right, Devils Lightning, maybe one of the easiest matchups series in round one.
Yeah,
Lightning
sure.
are just going to take the Devils. It's not even going to be a question.
Yeah,
it will be the most boring hockey.
Well, I would tend to disagree there. I think it would be fun to watch as a fan, just because New Jersey plays a very speed game and high flying, and Tampa does as well. So I think there are going to be a lot of goals scored, especially if Keith Kincaid can't keep his play up, because there's a time last year and early this season that I was surprised this guy was still even in the league. Mind you, because goaltending is such a weird position, he's played really well down the stretch here, but I think he gets a little exposed. But yeah, you mentioned it in the opening that you think it's going to be a sweep, and I think so too. I think this is the one round, probably in the first round, that could be a sweep. And nothing against the Devils. They've had a really great year. They have a lot of young, exciting players. Like Taylor Hall is going to get his first taste of playoffs. He's a Hart Trophy in the conversation. Nico Hischier is there. Jesper Bratt. A lot of those guys. So we'll see how much of a fight. But like Tampa Bay is just Tampa Bay, and they're just too good. They're too deep. And like Taylor Hall is, I think, 50 points ahead of his next closest teammate. So you shut down Taylor Hall, that team's really not going to score many goals.
There you go. Yeah, no, completely agree. You can't rely on one single player to get you anywhere. You can't rely on your goaltender. You can't rely on Taylor Hall. You can't rely on one single player on your team to get you the win.
Well, yeah, I would say if you could rely on one player, and I mean, we're going to see it, like the goalies can steal games in the playoffs, but a winger is not the position that you can rely on. And I do think we see Corey Schneider before the series ends. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm. There you go. All right, moving on. Blue Jackets and Capitals.
This one is like...
This one's a tricky one to call.
Yeah, this one might be the hardest one for me to call in the first round. Because... and I mean, we'll talk about the Sharks soon, but I've just kind of given up on the Caps. They kind of have to prove me wrong at this point. Like, I've given them the benefit of the doubt year after year, and saying that as well, I think Columbus has been a team that's underperformed a large part of the season and is kind of just started to hit their groove, especially with the acquisition of Vanek. It's really produced, give them another scoring line with Wenberg and Jenner. Seems to kind of spark those two players. So if they can continue, Seth Jones is a guy to watch on the Blue Jackets, and Werenski, but Jones is a Norris nominee in my mind this year, just what he's done. And Sergei Bobrovsky in the Vezina conversation as well. So I see Columbus as just maybe more of a complete team, but I mean, you can't really rule out the Caps, all the firepower they have. But could you see that Grubauer is getting the start for Game 1?
Heard that. Saw that.
There's controversy right off the bat, eh?
Well, sometimes it works better to, sometimes it's worth it to start someone else. Case in point, Pens, Murray versus Fleury.
Exactly, yeah.
Here's this kid has no experience. Fleury, and ends up replacing Fleury.
Yeah, and then I was just going to mention that too.
Getting the win, and getting the biggest win, the one that you need. So, I mean, sometimes it works to shake things up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, if the last two playoff runs have taught us anything, I think it's the importance of having a reliable backup or, a dual goaltender. Because, yeah, Pittsburgh showed that, hey, their one guy went down, there's another guy ready to step in. So it could really work to the Caps' advantage, like you said. But, I mean, Braden Holtby has been your number one goalie all season, and, I mean, for the last few years. And, yes, he's had some rough playoffs and stuff, but this is kind of a statement for the franchise, I think, going forward. It's definitely a situation to watch in the summer with the Caps goaltending, because Grubauer has been really good down the stretch, so I get the call, but kind of signals a change of direction, because Braden Holtby contract is coming up. Grubauer is a restricted free agent. They've got a guy named Samsonov coming in. He'll be signing it at the end of this month, so he's one of the top prospects in the game as far as goaltenders are concerned. So I could really see Holtby getting traded this offseason, and this is kind of the first indicator of that. But it'll be a tight series. Like I said, we got Ovechkin, we got Kuznetsov, you got Backstrom, you got Oshie, and it'll be fun. I'm going to say 7 games there.
Yeah, definitely 7 games. Sharks, Ducks.
Sharks, Ducks. Well, you start with this one, because I'll say my piece in a bit.
I have such a soft spot in my heart for the San Jose Sharks. I adore that team. I I actually probably like more players on that team than I like on the Maple Leafs. I mean,
Really?
personality-wise. I just think
Interesting.
they're awesome. They're hilarious. They're great. But despite them, having that that really deep playoff experience from the Nashville series, I just don't think they still haven't really been able to get back to that. And I think that there's a little bit of magic gone and a little bit of pep from their step gone. And I think the Ducks are just a little stronger. And have a little bit more to prove.
Yeah, it's it's always really fun when California teams meet in the playoffs, and there's potential that it happens in back-to-back series, so that'll be fun to watch. But I would agree, especially because they're missing Jumbo Joe too. It's just it's a big loss for them, and San Jose has kind of just been really meh all year. I think they've just kind of been there and not really. I mean, they picked up Evander Kane, who's performed very well for them, but I just don't see them as a team that's really going to do much damage in the playoffs, and I do think it'll be a close series. It could be. I think the games might be closer than what the series ends up being, because I think Anaheim might take this in 5 or 6 games, but I think all those games could be close. But either way, I see Anaheim just being deeper, and I mean, if people remember, I had Anaheim going to the conference final. I think they're. And if people do remember, obviously I put money on them to win the cup way back in December. But
this is true.
I think they've been playing their best hockey all season. I think they're 9-1 in their last 10, and they actually stole home ice away from the Sharks, who had it for half the season. So that could be a huge factor in this series. And John Gibson's a Vezina caliber goalie this year. They've got 3 lines that can really score, and kind of like I mentioned with the Maple Leafs and Bruins, I think that's where Anaheim's going to do his damage against playoff opponents this year, is that third line of Henrique, Kasha, and Richie getting some nice matchups against the opponents. And I mean, Andre Kasha, again, it's probably the best kept secret in the NHL. He was a 20-goal scorer this year, played super low minutes, and I think he only played 60 games. So that's almost a 30-goal pace on playing mostly third-line minutes. So keep an eye out for him on the Ducks, and yeah, I think I'll give San Jose 2 games as well. I'll be boring and go with the 6 games, but I could see it done in 5.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to see the Sharks get a little bit more rough. I'd like to see a little bit more of that kind of LA style of play.
Yeah.
Just woven into there, because you know what, they are a little bit they seem a little bit too relaxed. And I'd like them to have a little bit more brute force behind their play, and I think that would just make all the difference.
And it's going to be the matchups again. I mean, it's going to be Getzlaf versus Burns. They've got, you can't really rule out Pavelski and Couture. Those are really good 2 playoff performers. It's just the other guys that have question marks, like Thomas Hertl without Joe Thornton there, and Evander Kane. How's he going to perform in his first playoffs? And Mikhail Bodker. And, they're younger guys, and Timo Meier and stuff. So I just don't know if they have the depth this year. And they're kind of just a team in limbo. So we'll see it. Kind of like Philly. It'll be an important year to see how the young players perform going forward.
All right, so let's wrap up with, you know what? More than the Golden Knights were a Cinderella story, the Colorado Avalanche are the Cinderella story of the season. Golden Knights, fine, great, your inaugural. You only get the highlight because it's your first season, your inaugural season. The Avs went from the bottom to the top, and that's a Kanye song, right?
Maybe. Could be
a Drake song? Ooh, sorry, guys. I don't know.
Obviously, we're big hip-hop fans.
Yeah, from the bottom to the top, or enough to get into the playoffs. The Colorado Avalanche are by far the most amazing story of this season.
I appreciate you saying that, Star.
I have found my love for the Colorado Avalanche. And
Snuck in by the hair of their chin.
barely made it there. And it's, the Preds have the experience. So, I mean, unfortunately, it's a symptom of a matchup. And I think, it is what it is. There's no way around it, really. The Preds are going to win. It's probably going to be a pretty easy series for them. But I hope that, kind of like the Golden Knights, with this playoff performance and with this playoff, by being in the playoffs, their rink is full next year. You're going to find Avs fans coming out of the woodworks. Like, all of a sudden, everyone's going to want an Avs jersey. Even non-Avs fans are going to be watching this game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it'll be, like, again, an entertaining series, much like the Tampa, New Jersey one will be. Like, both these teams like to score. They play fast. So it'll be fun hockey to watch. But, I mean, yeah, it's not – I don't think anyone really expects Colorado to win. For me, the season's already been a huge success. And winning that game against the Blues last Saturday was, like, the epitome of their season. So – they you could see how much that game meant to them, and just being here means to them, and especially this group moving forward. If they lost that game and just missed the playoffs, they would still have so many question marks in their head about, because they had it in their they controlled their own destiny. So if they had lost it down the stretch and didn't get in, they'd only have themselves to blame, and I think that would have done more damage to their psyche especially after last season. So you could tell a huge weight was just lifted off their shoulders when they won that game, and they're playing free now. So it'll be fun to watch how they react to that, and just with no pressure on them, just go out and have fun. And I mean, Nathan McKinnon's worth the price of admission alone. So I think his line and him alone could. I expect it to be over in 5 games. I think the Colorado win 1 game at home because they've had such a good home record all year, and McKinnon will get favorable matchups, but he could potentially steal a game himself, so it could be 6 games, but I don't think it'll be more than that. Yeah, the Preds are the President's Trophy winners. They're dominant. They've got the best defense in the league. They've got probably the Vezina winner in Rene. So, and I mean, Colorado's missing their number 1 goalie and their number 1 defenseman in Varlamov and Eric Johnson. So much like the Wild, they're not deep enough to really make up for that. So it's not going to be easy, but it'll be fun, and they're just happy to be here.
Exactly. And who knows what will happen next year and the year after.
Yeah, like I said, especially with kind of a case study like the Toronto Maple Leafs last year, going from one of the worst teams to making it. I think this signals, a big turnaround for the Avs, and this experience is only going to benefit them next year and the year after. And who knows, maybe the Leafs and the Avs will meet in the final in a couple of years from now, just based on how things are trending. So. Should be fun.
Now that would be interesting to watch.
Yes. Good. Nice.
Okay, so that's Stanley Cup playoff preview. Of course, they get set on April 11th with round 1. Jets are kicking it off, which is great. Great to have at least 2 Canadian teams. It's always good. And the Jets are unstoppable, on fire.
Yeah. And they're good teams too, right? They actually have a chance of making noise. It's not like they're just happy to have made it. These are 2 top teams in each conference, and it's nice to have them in separate conferences too, so you have someone to cheer for, every night.
Every night, and hopefully into round 2, and who knows, maybe even into round 3. You never know. Tell us what you think. Talk to us about the playoff format, though. We'll go back to the beginning where we talked about ideal playoff formats and how the current version is less ideal. So let us know what you think. What would be your dream playoff matchup scenario, idea? How would you make it different? Would you keep it the same? Let us know. You can tweet us at the NHO Show. You can find us on Facebook, the NHO Show. You can, as always, I always say this, you can stalk us very easily. We will take it. We will happily let you stalk us.
Are you stalking me? Because that would be super.
I'm stalking you. I stalk you all the time.
That's from Van Wilder.
Oh, I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, no worries.
All right, I just got Stanley Cup stuff on the brain. I don't know. All I'm talking about is hockey. I got nothing else. Yeah, so tweet us at the NHO show. We will see where the Stanley Cup playoffs take us through round one. We'll be back, by this time next week. We'll have at least a couple of storylines to talk about, and all of our ideas and all of our predictions may have completely changed by this point next week. Disclaimer.
There you go. Enjoy. I know I will. So stay tuned to our Twitter, like Story said, and for all the instant analysis, because I'm going to be nervously drinking throughout and tweeting all of my random thoughts that come to my head, probably.
Oh, geez. If anyone wants to send pizza to Colin's house, I'm sure he will like it.
As long as there's no cheese on it, or meat.
All right. That caught me off guard. I'm also, send cheeseless pizza and meatless pizza to my house, do you please? To both of our houses together. Okay, that was the NHO show. Stanley Cup playoff prediction. It is the most wonderful time of the year, and it will be interesting to watch.